our whole purpose as a child of God is to go to the temple, but you can't go until you're old enough and you make all these sacred covenants and no one knows what actually goes on in it till they get there. So I'm finding out things about the temple and also wondering, should I be looking at this? Because I'm not supposed to know, but I gotta know, and this is probably fake anyway. There is something that says you make an oath and you use these hand motions that you will slit your throat and cut out your bowels if you ever divulge the secrets of the temple. And I was laughing because it sounded so ridiculous and so completely made up. So I bring my mom in. I'm like, Mom, come here. Come here. You got to look at this. Look what this website says. And I read it to her and I look over just waiting for her response. And she's just blank face staring at me. And I'm like, that's funny, right? Trying to get her to react. And she was just like, well, and that's when I start getting sick to my stomach. And I go back to her and say, they don't do this, right? And she's sitting there because if you think about it, what I'm asking her to divulge would be going against the exact covenant that I just read, that you covenant to slit your throat and cut out your bowels if you reveal the temple secrets. And she has her daughter looking up at her like, tell me what's going on. And in the moment, I'm so lucky that I have a mom who chose her family over this church and decided not to lie to me. And she goes, well, they don't do that anymore. I lost my mind. I was like, what do you mean they don't do that anymore? That's insane. That's what's going on in the temple and those gorgeous little castle-looking things on the side of the road. I was flabbergasted. But also I was a teenager, so I wasn't ready to topple over my beliefs at that time. It was my identity. It was everything. I was trying to be the example in Oregon, this shining example of how Mormons can be normal. And look, I'm great. I wasn't ready to go back to my friend and say, yeah, you are right, and I'm living a lie, and this is crazy. So I just put it on the shelf. That's what Mormons say. Just put it on the shelf, leave it alone, until eventually you put so many things on the shelf that it just completely breaks and falls, and you have no option but to just redefine everything and figure it out and go through a faith crisis.
So your mother obviously knew this. Was she able to enter the temple? Or is that just a male thing?
Yeah.
Oh, she could?
Yeah. Yeah, so the men usually go, they call it getting their endowments. They usually go when they go on a mission. So young, 18, 19 years old. They have all these privileges to go to the temple. For women, usually you can't go until you get married in the temple to a worthy priesthood holder, is what they call the men. So for women, even if you're 30 years old, sometimes they still won't allow you to go to the temple until you get married. So that's part of the sexism that's underlying in the church. And once you get to the temple, I think they also recently changed this language, but when you do get married in the temple, which is what they tell you should do, and it's the only way to get to the highest level of heaven, because there's levels, you have to, the women swear fealty to their husband and obedience to their husband, and the men swear fealty and obedience to God. So there's another little level of sexism there, and a lot of women come out of the temple on their wedding day feeling defeated, crushed, betrayed, confused. Why can't I have a relationship with God? Why do I have to go through my husband? So yes, my mom had gone through the temple. I remember actually my half-sister was sealed to us, and I was lucky enough, I was worthy enough. Yes, I had to do a worthiness interview at like 10 or something to be able to go and witness my sister being, quote, sealed to us for time and all of eternity. And it was kind of the same ceremony that would happen if you were getting married. So I kind of got to see what it was like. Have you seen the temple clothes that you have to wear?
It's practically like a wedding, isn't it?
Oh, no, it is so much worse.
Really? Well, I don't mean like bride and groom the way we have, but it looks similar to a wedding kind of thing. Am I wrong?
Let me describe for you.
Okay.
Let me describe for you. And maybe you'll want to like put something up on the screen so everyone can see or everyone can Google it. But these outfits, when I walked in, I was like, where am I? Because this is not the church that I thought I belonged to. And that's almost everybody's reaction, because you're not allowed to talk about the temple once you leave. So you can't even really tell anyone. And everything's supposed to be a secret. And they say, it's not secret, it's sacred, but it's a secret. So let me visualize here. So the women are in this like white long dress. And I believe because you have to cover your shoulders, they're at least mid-arm, like bicep. But usually they're down to your wrists, I think. I don't know if they have short sleeve. I'm pretty sure all of them are long sleeve, but correct me in the comments, guys. And then you have on these sashes, like these weird sashes that during the temple ceremony, you have to move them around depending on what they're saying. And then you have an apron that is supposed to be the Adam and Eve leaf, you know, like the leaf covering the groin, but it's a full-on apron that's leaves in bright green. And then the men have on these weird baker hats. It's so culty and weird. I wish I could show you a picture right now. But that's what they're wearing. So I walk in and there's everyone in this circle wearing these weird things. And they're looking at me like, oh, it's so nice that Shalise got to come to the temple because it was an exception. I shouldn't have really been able to be there. And there's an altar in the middle that's like this weird cushy thing that you kneel at. It was so odd. And then when I left, even one of my aunts came up to me and she's like, bet you didn't expect that. What did you think of the outfits? Because everyone knows that it's so weird. And once you're in the cool kids club, you own the weirdness. And then there's like an initiation where you get to poke fun at it for the newcomers. So it's just odd. But once you get to that level, you can't back out. You've spent your whole life waiting to get there. And that's the only way that you can get to the highest level of heaven. So you're just going to go with it. You're going to go with any of the weird stuff that come out.
That's so weird because just an example of where I came out of, Pentecostal type non-denominational Christianity, we would get the gift of the Holy Spirit. And so we would be at these concerts that you're talking about, or even non-concert places where they just play the music, and it would get down into the worshipy kind of slow and really emotionally grabbing music. And people would get what they call baptized in the Holy Spirit. And I know that you guys have baptism of the dead. There's all sorts of interesting things that go into the Mormon tradition. But we would speak in tongues. And to those who are on the inside, like you've already gotten over the weirdness of it and you just own it, like you're talking about with these gowns, but you're just sitting there, and you're like gibberish to God because it's a language that the angels, it's the language of angels that God understands. And they're supposed to be interpreters, all sorts of weird, like kind of mystical, strange actions. But people from the outside who come in, you're like, in my mind, when new people would come in who've never done this, you have to try to like convince yourself in your mind, this isn't weird. This isn't weird. And you know they're about to hear, and I mean, like there's wild stuff going on. And my wife, when I got her introduced to it, she's like going with the flow on purpose. And then she's telling me later, this is weird. This is not normal. But yeah, I just figure I'd relate to you. So you're finding out like you're bouncing around in your timeline, but it's necessary to paint this picture of strange things that always stuck with you, friends who are highlighting things. Isn't it interesting that people who aren't on the inside notice stuff before those who are? So people who are on the outside are always recognizing problems or things that don't match the people on the inside. Yeah. But I find this problem elsewhere as well. Like Christians are quick to point out flaws about Islam or the Muslim faith, or you know, various groups can notice problems with others and not themselves.